Hey guys, tonight we're slipping our rough woolen boots onto the icy sand of a misty Norse shoreline. You shiver as the salt-laden breeze slices across your cheeks, and your fingers curl instinctively around a worn wooden bucket that smells strongly of yesterday's herring. The gulls screech overhead like unpaid stand-up comedians, and the horizon glows a smoky gray pink, as if someone smudged charcoal across the sky. You're here at dawn, earlier than you ever wanted to be awake. But that's the fisherman's life for you, no sleeping in, no fancy brunch meme. You're about to face off with your arch-nemesis, the clever, slippery seal who loves stealing your breakfast straight from your nets. You probably won't survive this kind of dawn, if you're the type who needs 4 oat milk lattes, just to function. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along the slushy sand, toes going numb, wondering why you didn't choose a noble trade like poetry or harp playing. Your neighbor Bjorn always claims his great-grandfather invented a fish trap that was so brilliant. Even Odin himself got jealous and stole the design to catch celestial trout. You squint at the waterline, your mind playing tricks on you. Did that wave just wink at you? Oh no, it's just a seal poking its shiny, judgmental head up, probably plotting your financial ruin. Historically, Norse fishermen started their work well before sunrise, a choice that seemed both practical and tragic. Fish moved in different patterns during the early hours, and those twilight waves concealed your approach. But there's also something poetic about it. Standing at the edge of the known world, listening to the ocean hum, a melody only you can hear. The creaking of your boat behind you is like a medieval lullaby, echoing through your bones. Seals, clever beasts, have been notorious for centuries. They appear in folklore as shapeshifters called selkies, who peel off their sealskins and transform into stunning humans to dance under the moonlight. You pause to imagine the seals you fight every day, suddenly waltzing at a beachside rave, glow sticks tied to their flippers. Historians still argue whether the Norse truly believed these creatures were enchanted, or just enjoyed telling each other scandalous stories after too much mead. Your boat is little more than a curved piece of wood, patched together with tar and prayers. You run your hand along its warped edge, feeling each splinter as a badge of your survival. The scent of fish oil and seaweed hangs heavy, like a cologne no marketing team could possibly sell. You sling the net over your shoulder and shuffle forward, careful not to slip on the black stones. As you push off from the shore, your mind drifts to the seals again. You swear one of them snickers at you, or maybe it's just the echo of the waves. You remind yourself to stay focused, but your imagination flushes off like a wayward seagull. Perhaps you could train a team of cormorants to guard the nets, like avian bouncers at an exclusive underwater club. Or maybe you'll invent a seaweed-based alarm system that honks at every sneaky flipper. The possibilities swirl like a whirlpool around your sleepy brain. Historians love to debate how much Norse fishermen relied on superstition versus skill. Did they chalk up a bad catch to an angry sea goddess, or just blame it on a broken net? You lean towards the goddess theory. It's far more comforting to blame an unseen divine grudge than your own clumsy knots. There's also the running argument about whether certain fishing chants actually improved catch rates, or simply made the rowers feel less alone, out there in the vast blue unknown. A low fog creeps around your ankles as you set out, turning every distant boulder into a possible troll waiting to collect a toll. You take a moment to steady your breath, your hands tightening around the oar. Each pull feels like you're churning the sea itself into a sleepy soup, the rhythm as hypnotic as a lullaby. Just as you start to find your groove, a sudden splash jolts you. You whip around and lock eyes with a particularly plump seal. You could swear it raises a brow at you, if seals had brows, and gives a dismissive little snort. You mutter under your breath, promising revenge in the form of the world's most complicated net. Perhaps this will finally be the day you outwit your slick rival, or perhaps tomorrow, or the day after that. The game continues, as it always has. Your mind wanders back to Bjorn's claim about Odin and the celestial trout. You snicker. Wouldn't it be something to climb up to Asgard with a bucket of fish, demanding a cook-off? You imagine Thor, unimpressed, bashing your herring with Mjolnir into a sad smear. Loki would probably turn your boat into a seal just to watch the chaos. The dawn sky is now glowing in streaks of tangerine and pale gold, and for a fleeting moment, you almost forget your frostbitten toes. You watch the seals dart and dive, their bodies slicing through the waves like whispered jokes you can't quite catch. You sigh, feeling a weird sort of kinship with them, your eternal dance partners on this salty stage. You close your eyes and inhale the sea's damp breath. The scent seeps into your bones, an old friend that never really leaves. You promise yourself that tomorrow you'll finally try that seaweed decoy trick Bjorn keeps raving about. Maybe, just maybe, this time the seals will fall for it. You hold onto that slim hope, like a candle flickering bravely against the morning wind. The boat rocks gently as you drift further from shore, the horizon turning into a watercolor blur. Your hands work the nets almost instinctively now. Toss, loop, tug, knot. You might not remember what you had for dinner 2 nights ago, but, you know, each knot by feel, each strand by smell. The ropes are soaked with brine and old fish stories. Each fiber a sticky reminder of past triumphs and embarrassing sea-led disasters. You glance over the side of your boat and see a glimmer of movement. For a second, your heart leaps, but it's just a jellyfish, drifting by like a half-asleep ghost in a jelly hat. Your secret weapon today is the seaweed. Slippery, greenish-brown, smelling somewhere between a neglected compost pile and fresh cucumber. Seaweed isn't just salad filler in the future sushi joints you can't imagine yet. Here, it's your prized tool, the ultimate decoy in this slippery arms race with seals. By stuffing it cleverly around and inside the nets, you create an underwater illusion, a wriggling mirage that confuses the seals long enough for you to snag the real fish. You grin, picturing a confused seal pausing mid-snatch to scratch its imaginary chin. Historians still argue whether Norse fishermen discovered this tactic themselves or borrowed it from even older seafaring neighbors. Maybe the Sami, maybe distant kelp-chewing Celts. The debate rages on in scholarly papers and late-night, ale-soaked tavern arguments you can almost hear echoing across centuries. What is clear is that these fishermen weren't simply brutish fish dumpers. They were engineers of the waves, artists of deception, and part-time pranksters against nature. You tug the net tight and lean back, your arms trembling from the morning's cold and the constant seesaw of the boat. Above you, gulls circle like tiny feathered debt collectors, waiting for you to drop even the tiniest scrap. One squawks loudly. You consider flipping it off, but decide you need karma on your side today. Besides, if gulls had their own social media, that one would definitely counsel you with a well-edited screech montage. The seals, meanwhile, float nearby, acting casual. You can almost imagine them with little monocles and notebooks, taking notes on your every move. You mutter curses into your scarf, though you do it gently. You wouldn't want to wake the ocean gods from their salty naps. You squint at one, particularly round seal, who seems to be whispering to a friend. Are they planning a heist? A surprise synchronized dive? You half expect them to pull out a tiny whiteboard with diagrams. Your fingers pause on a frayed knot. You think of your father, who used to claim that each knot was a spell, each loop a prayer to injure the sea god. He would say, "Tie it like you're trapping a dream." You'd always roll your eyes. But now, out here in the mist, the words echo more like truth than superstition. You resume knotting, mumbling your own sleepy chants. Whether it's magic or muscle memory, it feels good to pretend you're in control. A sudden slap of a tail on the water snaps you back. You look over and see the seals swirling around in chaotic circles, seemingly dancing to music only they can. Here, you remember that story the elders tell. Once upon a time, a fisherman fell so in love with a seal woman that he abandoned his boat forever, living among the seals until he forgot every human word, except more fish. Historians still argue whether these stories were romantic metaphors, cautionary tales, or just drunken fishermen trying to justify missed quotas. You ease the net deeper, letting the seaweed float and sway like ghostly dancers. The water glimmers in fleeting silver streaks as fish dart through your trap, unaware of their impending cameo in tomorrow's stew. You imagine them squealing in little fishy voices, complaining about your lack of hospitality. "We came here for the algae buffet," they'd protest. You snicker to yourself, nearly losing grip on the rope. You adjust your stance as the boat tilts slightly. The wooden hull creaks a tired groan, like an old man complaining about his knees. The seaweed waves in the water like eerie hands beckoning from below. It feels almost ritualistic, like you're performing an ancient dance, one that connects you to every fisherman before and after, whether they fought seals, krokens, or plain bad luck. The chill creeps deeper into your bones. You try to ignore the pins and needles gnawing at your fingertips. You imagine you're wearing the ultimate Viking wetsuit, lined with soft rabbit fur, infused with seal oil, and blessed by an itinerant shaman who moonlights as a part-time chef. You sigh. Too bad all you really have is a soggy wool tunic that smells like regret and dried sardines. The net finally feels heavy. That blessed resistance. That means dinner is on its way home with you. You heave, every muscle shaking like a newborn. CALF. You can't help but glance around, half expecting the seals to rush you in an angry mob, brandishing tiny fish. Instead, they just watch, blinking, as if silently grading your form. One even claps a flipper. You'd rate it a C+. Honestly. Once more, you let the seaweed trickle through your fingers, admiring its strange, otherworldly texture. Maybe you'll save a piece to hang above your bed for luck, or at least to confuse the fleas in your blanket. The sea, the seals, the cold wind, it all fuses into one big salty lullaby, rocking you deeper into that hazy, timeless trance. Your arms ache, your head swims, and the horizon fades into a watercolored dream. You brace yourself for another round tomorrow, for another dance with your slippery, sassy rivals. You know, deep down, you wouldn't trade it for anything. Well, maybe for a warm bath and a loaf of sweet rye bread. But then again, what's life without a little seal sabotage to keep you humble? The sun hangs lower now, an orange yolk melting into the hazy sky as you drift further along the inky water. The oars squeak like startled mice each time you pull them through the gentle swell. You glance over your shoulder at the long coastline, a jagged line that feels like it could vanish behind a blink. You're alone, but not alone. The seals bob nearby like curious spirits, and you suspect they're placing bets on how many fish you'll actually keep today. You adjust your grip on the oar, fingers stiff and slightly purple. You tell yourself that rowing in the moonlight is a kind of poetic workout. You get toned arms and existential dread in one convenient package. Historians still argue whether the Norse truly relied on stars and moon phases for nighttime navigation, or if they mostly used smell, sound, and sheer stubbornness to find their way home. You decide it's probably all three. After all, who wouldn't trust their nose when fish guts are involved? A sudden breeze brushes your cheeks, bringing with it a salty hush that makes you think of distant songs. You pause to listen, half expecting to hear an ancient chorus rising from the depths. Instead, there's only the slap of water against the hull, and the distant, mocking laughter of a seal. You groan, imagining them gathered at a sealed bar later, sharing jokes about your rowing style. You take a moment to scan the darkening horizon, eyes tracing the pale veins of moonlight across the waves. The sea glimmers, each ripple a shifting rune that only the bravest or most sleep-deprived might try to decipher. You run a thumb along the edge of your oar, the wood worn smooth from years of gripping through storms and calm alike. You tell yourself that this moonlit drift is a special gift, a secret performance only you and the sea get to share. Historians also debate if these late-night excursions were a sign of desperation, fishermen pushing further into dangerous hours when fish were more plentiful, or if they simply relished the solitude, a few stolen hours away from snoring neighbors and constant chores. You lean toward solitude, personally. After all, the sea doesn't nag you about your muddy boots, or ask when you'll fix the leaking roof. You try to distract yourself by counting seals. 1, 2, maybe 8. Or is that a rock? You squint, realizing too late that they might be counting you back. Maybe they've got their own seal census department. Scribbling on kelp notepads, one clumsy human, overly talkative, 0 fish so far. A gentle wave bumps your boat, jostling your net. You inhale sharply, suddenly aware of every tiny splash, every glint of moonlight bouncing off the waves. The ocean feels alive, almost playful, like a cat batting at your dangling feet. You clutch your net closer, as if it holds not just fish but the last scraps of your dignity. Overhead, the moon peeks through a rip in the cloud blanket, washing your face in ghostly light. You wonder what the seals think of the moon. Do they see it as a glowing dinner bell or an annoying nightlight? You consider asking them, but they seem busy comparing tail flippers. In the lull between strokes, your mind drifts to the old songs. Your grandmother used to hum a tune she claimed was taught by a seal woman who had fallen in love with her great-great-grandfather. The melody supposedly made fish swim into nets willingly, as if hypnotized. Historians still argue if such songs existed, or if they were just creative excuses for an empty basket. You hum it now, voice low and raspy, surprising yourself with how natural it feels slipping out into the mist. The moonlight flickers against the net like 1,000 small mirrors, catching glimpses of your past and your future. You imagine future fishermen, centuries from now, standing in VR headsets trying to simulate this very moment. They'll never know the cold bite of the sea spray or the sting of raw rope on calloused palms. You smirk, almost feeling sorry for them. A soft thunk jolts you. The net brushes against a rock or maybe a seal's forehead. You yank it up instinctively, heart thudding. There's a flurry of splashes, and you catch a glimpse of sleek fur vanishing into the depths. You laugh, a sound that startles even you. Maybe it's delirium, maybe it's joy. The line between the two grows blurrier under the moon. Your arms ache with each pull, but there's a trance-like pleasure in the rhythm. Row, pause, breathe, listen. You become less of a fisherman and more of a drifting ghost, gliding on silver waves toward nowhere in particular. The horizon tilts gently, your eyelids heavy. The seals circle closer now, their curious eyes shining like small moons themselves. You murmur a joke to one, something about kelp salads being overrated. The seal snorts, flicks a fin, and disappears beneath the surface, perhaps offended or simply bored. You feel oddly honored that it acknowledged you at all. The boat creaks again, a gentle old friend reminding you that, despite the cosmic dance above, you're still a mortal soul with wet socks and a soggy biscuit waiting back on shore. You close your eyes for a moment, rocking with the water's lullaby, feeling yourself dissolve into the night mist. When you open them again, the moon has climbed higher, the world bathed in soft silver. You grin at the seals, who remained half visible in the shifting light, as though deciding whether to let you keep tonight's catch or snatch it away in a bold act of aquatic mischief. You adjust your net one last time, muttering a silent challenge to the universe, daring it to surprise you. And perhaps, tonight, it might. The horizon starts to blush with the first hints of rose and gold, painting the waves in shy watercolor strokes. You paddle closer to shore, your net heavy with whatever luck decided to favor you tonight. Your arms feel like they've been replaced by wet noodles, trembling with each motion. You imagine your muscles filing a formal complaint to the village elder about workplace conditions. You mutter an apology to them, promising extra mead, and maybe a warm sauna session, if only you had such luxuries. The beach greets you like an old friend, spattered with driftwood, broken shells, and secrets left by countless tides. As you drag your boat onto the sand, you hear a familiar chorus of voices drifting from the longhouse nearby. Your family is awake, debating what to make of the morning's haul. Eel stew or herring pie. You'd think you'd rather chew on a rock than endure another week of eel stew. But you keep that to yourself, after all. The cook has feelings, and a formidable wooden spoon. Your mother shouts from the doorway, her hair wrapped in a faded cloth that still smells faintly of juniper and salt. She waves a ladle, like a ceremonial scepter, demanding to know whether you've finally caught enough to feed more than the cat. You lift your net in response, feeling like a half-frozen warrior returning from battle. She rolls her eyes, muttering something about next time. Bring home a whale. Before turning to stir a pot large enough to hide an entire toddler as you haul the fish inside. Your siblings crowd around, poking at the scales and sniffing the air as if auditioning for a new reality show called Guess. That smell. One brave sister insists she can predict the future based on the shine of a fish's eyes. Historians still argue whether these odd rituals were genuine attempts at divination, or just creative ways to justify who gets the biggest portion at dinner. Your uncle, perched on a three-legged stool that wobbles with every giggle, offers his running commentary. He claims he once saw a seal transform into a beautiful maiden, who then taught him the secret recipe for a fish stew so delicious it could make Odin himself weep. You listen with half an ear, your mind more focused on the thought of warm broth than divine culinary endorsements. Still, you nod solemnly, as if every word might be gospel. You set your net aside and peel off your soaked tunic, steam rising from your skin as you edge toward the fire. The warmth slides up your spine like a sleepy cat curling into your lap. You close your eyes and inhale deeply, catching notes of seaweed, smoke, and something oddly sweet, probably your cousin's failed attempt at honey bread. You decide not to ask. Amidst the chatter, someone brings up the seals again, that ever-present enemy and occasional dinner guest. There's a heated discussion about whether seals worship the moon, or simply love the moonlit fish buffet. Your grandfather insists that seals hold secret moon ceremonies under the waves, where they chant in ancient seal language and decide which human boat to sabotage next. You picture a council of seals sitting in a kelp amphitheater, casting votes. With their flippers, you almost snort broth out of your nose. A cousin suggests building scarecrow-like figures dressed in seaweed to ward off the seals. Another proposes seal masks that might frighten them into thinking humans have joined their ranks. Historians still argue if these tactics were ever genuinely attempted, or simply fireside jokes, designed to keep spirits high during lean winters. Argument drifts into family gossip. Who's courting whom? Who might secretly be half-troll? Whose fish stew gave Uncle Thorvald an unplanned 3-day vision quest? You realize that while the sea tests your strength and patience, home tests your ability to keep a straight face. You sip your soup quietly, content to let the stories swirl around you like an extra blanket. Your eyes drift toward the doorway, where a sliver of early dawn glimmers, hinting at yet another round with the seals soon enough. The thought doesn't fill you with dread, surprisingly. There's a certain thrill in the dance, a rhythm as old as the sea and as intimate as your grandmother's lullabies. You know you'll complain tomorrow, curse the cold, and swear you're quitting forever. But come the next silver dawn, you'll be there, nets in hand, eyes squinting through the fog, heart hammering to the beat of seal laughter. You pull your blanket closer, the wool scratchy but comforting. Outside, the waves whisper against the rocks like an old friend with too many stories to tell. You think about your father's words, again, tie it like you're trapping a dream. You realize now he meant more than nets. He meant everything, every joke, every knot, every slip on the deck. Life is one endless series of traps and releases, hopes and letdowns, fish and fables. A final clatter snaps your attention back. Your mother has finished stirring and is now ladling out thick portions into wooden bowls. You grab yours eagerly, the steam fogging your lashes. You take a bite, the warmth exploding across your tongue. For a moment, everything else, the aching muscles, the plotting seals, the moon's silent judgment, fades into the background. Tomorrow's challenges await, but tonight, surrounded by gossip, fish eyes, and half-believed moonlit myths, you feel oddly victorious, and just a tiny bit invincible, if only until sunrise. You lean back on the bench, bowl in hand, feeling your eyelids flutter as warmth spreads from your core outward. Someone pokes the fire, sending sparks spiraling into the smoky rafters, like lazy fireflies on vacation. Around you, the chatter shifts from gossip to songs, old meandering ballads about seals who fell in love with fishermen, about fish that glowed in the moonlight, and about sea monsters who preferred poetry over pillaging. You hum along absent-mindedly, each note vibrating in your ribs like a friendly ghost. The seals come up again. Of course, your grandfather claims that one particularly chubby seal you often battle was once a prince cursed for stealing moon cheese. You nearly choke on your stew at the idea of a moon dairy. Historians still argue if these songs were meant to instruct, amuse, or simply distract villagers from the ceaseless cold. Outside, the waves tap against the shore, as if applauding your family's slightly off-key performance. You imagine the seals gathered beyond the tide line, harmonizing their own low choruses in response. Perhaps they're composing a diss track aimed at your whole clan, full of slick rhymes about stolen fish and clumsy knots. Aunt Frates claps her hands, declaring it's time for a seal song contest. Each family member takes turns improvising verses, some about heroic fishing exploits, others about seals stealing combs and weaving moonlit hairdos. Your uncle's verse involves a seal princess who moonlights as a brewer, crafting kelp-flavored mead so potent it can make a dragon tap dance. You laugh so hard your sides ache, wondering if seals really do brew secret ocean cocktails. You take your turn, chanting about your epic net today, and the moment you almost convinced a seal to join your rowing crew, the room erupts in giggles and groans, your mother shaking her head as if to say, "At least you didn't break the net this time." You bow dramatically, nearly slipping off the bench, which only makes them laugh harder. Historians still debate whether these seal songs were serious spiritual rituals or comedic icebreakers for long dark winters. Some claim the Norse truly believed seals were shapeshifters sent by the gods to test human patience. Others argue they were simply scapegoats for when fish stocks mysteriously disappeared. You suspect it's both practical explanations, wrapped in silly tales, the same way you wrap your feet in seaweed to keep them warm on the boat. As the contest winds down, the fire settles into a rhythmic crackle. Your sister braids bits of dried seaweed into your hair, claiming it will make you dream of ocean treasures. You let her, half asleep, your mind drifting to the vast midnight blue waves, and those curious black eyes following your every move. You picture the seals discussing you over seaweed smoothies, critiquing your rowing posture, or debating the merits of your net design. Someone begins humming a slow, melancholy tune about a fisherman who married a seal woman and lost her when she retrieved her hidden skin. Your mother hums along, her voice low and echoing with memories. You imagine that seal woman, walking into the fog, shimmering under moonlight. Her human life left behind like an old tunic on a riverbank. You lean forward to warm your hands, fingers dancing in the firelight. The images swirl around your brain, like kelp in a strong current. Moonlit dances, shape-shifting seals, love stories that slip through your hands like fine sand. Your heart tightens with a bittersweet pang, that soft ache you get when a song reminds you of something you never fully understood but always felt. The smell of salt and smoke drapes over you like a second blanket. You listen to the last echoes of the song fading into soft chatter and distant yawns. Someone asks whether seals celebrate birthdays. Another wonders if they decorate underwater caves with stolen fishing hooks and shiny rocks. The questions stack up, each more ridiculous and charming than the last. Weaving a web of childlike wonder, you happily get tangled in. You close your eyes for a moment, swaying slightly, feeling the rhythmic heartbeat of the waves echo inside your chest. You imagine seals raising tiny seaweed banners in your honor, awarding you the least predictable human fisherman trophy. You grin at the thought, a private joke only you and the ocean share. The fire begins to wane, glowing like an ember trapped inside a seashell. You lean into its warmth one last time, soaking up every bit before the cold night claims the room again. Your breath puffs out in small, dreamy clouds, and you catch yourself almost drifting off. But not yet. Tomorrow holds another salty showdown, another dawn duel of wit and net against seal cunning. Tonight, though, you let yourself sink into these silly, salty stories. You cherish the warmth, the teasing, and the chorus of laughter echoing like seabird cries across the room. Your fingers still smell of fish and seaweed, a strange badge of honor that only you and your slippery rivals might fully appreciate. You let out a slow sigh, feeling the last thread of tension slide off your shoulders. Tomorrow's nets can wait. Tonight, you belong to the song, the story, and the slow dance of the sea. The embers glow faintly behind you as you step outside, your tunic clinging to your skin like a soggy old friend. You breathe in the crisp, brine-laced air, feeling it wrap around your lungs and sweep away the sleepiness that had started to sink in. The stars blink overhead, scattered and indifferent, like the scattered fish scales back in the longhouse. You take a few steps toward the water, each footfall muffled by the soft hush of the sand. Your hands fidget with a stray piece of seaweed you tucked into your belt earlier. Maybe it's a good luck charm. Maybe it's just an itchy mistake. Either way, you find comfort in its slimy texture, a reminder of the dance you share with the sea and the seals. You can almost hear them giggling from the shallows, plotting their next prank on your nets. You wave at the water, half sincere, half sarcastic, and imagine them raising tiny mugs of kelp tea in greeting. Historians still argue whether the Norse believed seals actually understood human intentions, or if they just admired their persistence. You're convinced seals are smarter than half the people you know. After all, they never sit through long village meetings about tax fish, or how many moss patches are acceptable in a tunic. You approach the old wooden rack, where your tunic and nets hang to dry. The wool is still damp and heavy, stubbornly holding on to yesterday's rain, and sea spray like a gossiping neighbor. You sigh and shake it out, droplets flying off in messy arcs. You imagine each droplet containing a tiny seal spirit, rolling its eyes at your lack of waterproofing skills. Your fingers ache as you start repairing small tears in the net. The moonlight glints off the wet rope, each knot a small testament to sleepless nights and chilly dawns. You tie them tight, muttering under your breath like a street poet practicing his lines. You pause to blow on your hands, wincing as warmth struggles to seep back in. The net resists you like an old, stubborn relative, refusing help to cross the street. You lean against the rack for a moment, head tilted back to stare at the sky. 1,000 tiny fires flicker above you, and for a moment, you wonder what it would be like to fish among the stars. Maybe you'd reel in moon eels or stardust crabs. Maybe there's a galactic seal somewhere, sipping cosmic seaweed smoothies and judging your technique from above. The cold creeps up your spine in a slow, uninvited embrace. You wrap the damp tunic tighter around you, trying to convince your bones to stop rattling like loose dice. You imagine inventing a Viking-era heated blanket, stuffed with rabbit fur, and blessed by a sea priest. You chuckle to yourself at the thought, shaking your head. Maybe one day, or maybe never, you'll just keep shivering artistically, as tradition demands. Your grandmother's voice drifts through your mind. A wet wool tunic is a loyal friend. It keeps you humble. You snort. By that logic, humility is all you've ever known. You pat your chest as if to say, "Yes, I'm humble enough now. Thanks." You glance toward the longhouse, where faint light spills through cracks in the wood. Inside, someone lets out a muffled laugh. Probably your cousin bragging again about her imaginary friendship with the village's most handsome ox. You smirk, feeling a weird swell of gratitude for their noise, their warmth, their messy, half-true stories. As you pull another thread through the net, you think back to the seals. What if they had their own fireside stories about you? Perhaps they tell their pups, "Beware the awkward one who tries to sing to the moon." Or he's the one who drops half his fish in the shallows when he thinks no one's looking. You almost hope they do. After all, you've given them enough material. Historians still argue whether Norse fishermen believed seals could curse their families, or bring blessings depending on how they were treated. Some say leaving fish behind on purpose was an offering, to keep the seals in good spirits. You think about tomorrow's catch, and consider tossing a small fish back as a peace treaty. Just one, though you're not running a charity. Your hands finally finish the last stubborn knot. You stretch your back, hearing an unsettling series of cracks and pops that sound like a chorus of small bones applauding. You wince, promise yourself you'll stretch more, and promptly forget the promise. You wrap the mended net around your shoulder and walk toward the shore again. The moonlight spills across the water like melted silver, turning the waves into an endless shimmering blanket. The seals are still there, bobbing serenely, silhouettes swaying as if to a song only they can hear. You stand there a while, feet sinking into the cold, wet sand, your breath swirling in little clouds around your face. The sea, the seals, the stars above, they all feel woven into your marrow now, like secret stitches you'll never unravel. You close your eyes and listen to the water whisper against the rocks. Like an old friend, sharing half-forgotten secrets. The world feels softer here, suspended between tides and stars. Between dreams and salty reality. Tomorrow, you'll row out again. You'll curse the cold, chase the seals, and invent new knots in your half-frozen fingers. But for now, you stand, still, wrapped in wool and moonlight, humbled and a little amused by the mysteries around you. The morning dew still clings to your hair as you rise before the others, your breath visible in the crisp pre-dawn gloom. You shuffle toward the fish storage hut, where last night's spoils rest like gleaming trophies. You sniff the air cautiously, a mix of salt, old wood, and something reminiscent of slightly overcooked eel. You try not to gag, reassuring yourself that even questionable fish smells are a sign of success. You nudge a crate, watching fish scales catch the faint moonlight and sparkle like tiny, sarcastic stars. You grab a few of the better-looking specimens and sling them into a woven basket. Today is trading day, a chance to swap your fish for warm furs, new netting threads, and maybe, if you're lucky, a handful of dried berries to sweeten the endless porridge. You stagger under the load, picturing seals lining the beach like board market inspectors, shaking their heads at your sloppy technique. You smirk, imagining them whispering, "There goes the moon singer, with his questionable knots again." Historians still argue whether these village gatherings were strictly business, or if they doubled as vital social glue, a way to share stories, find potential partners, and brag about heroic fishing encounters, real or otherwise. You suspect it's a little of both. After all, nothing inspires romantic interest quite like a man who claims he battled a seal for an hour and only lost 3 fish and his dignity. As you enter the open clearing near the longhouse, you hear the low hum of conversation and the distant bleat of goats. You pass a woman trading a seal fur cloak for a woven basket, a man bartering to eels for a suspiciously small sack of barley. You try not to giggle when someone insists their fish are moon-kissed and guaranteed seal. You almost want to print that slogan on a wooden sign and parade it through town. You find your usual trading partner, a stout fellow named Ivar, who claims he can smell the difference between fish caught under a waxing moon and those caught under a waning one. Historians still argue if lunar phases truly affect fish flavor, or if people like Ivar just enjoy sounding mysterious to impress customers. You hand him the basket, and he squints into it with a seriousness usually reserved for royal decrees. He offers you a stack of rough furs in exchange, along with a small jar of thick, golden honey. You hold the jar like it's a sacred relic, resisting the urge to pop it open and lick it clean right then and there. Instead, you thank him with a dramatic bow, nearly toppling over a nearby pile of goat dung. You catch yourself just in time, muttering something about testing the wind direction, and scurry away before Ivar can start critiquing your posture. As you wander among the stalls, You overhear arguments about whether seals have learned to mimic human speech to trick fishermen into giving up prime fishing spots. One old woman swears she heard a seal say, "Try the cove today, the herring are juicy." You imagine a seal with a deep voice and impeccable comedic timing, holding a tiny microphone, and your shoulders shake with silent laughter. You trade for a few new net weights and a small, brightly dyed tunic patch, hoping it will someday patch that ever-expanding hole near your hip. You feel oddly triumphant, like a warlord returning from a raid. Except your plunder consists mostly of fish-smelling furs and an imaginary stand-up seal routine playing in your head. You finally sit down near the communal fire pit, clutching your new items like trophies. Someone offers you a sip of weak mead, and you accept gratefully, savoring the sour sweet burn that briefly distracts you from the ever-present chill gnawing at your bones. You watch the flicker of flames dance in the early light, the crackling logs punctuated by bursts of laughter, and the occasional off-key trading chant drifting from nearby. Your mind drifts to the seals again. Do they hold their own markets underwater? Perhaps trading shiny pebbles for tastier fish, or bartering secret moonlit dance techniques for the finest seaweed wraps. You can almost see them arguing passionately over whether a certain fish has too many bones, flippers flailing dramatically. You shake your head, amused at your own wandering mind, but the image lingers, making you smile. A young boy nearby proudly shows off a new toy boat, carved from driftwood and painted with squid ink designs. He insists it will outrun any seal in the fjord. You grin and nod, though you suspect even a toy boat would have a tough time against the slippery finesse of your whiskered rivals. You take another sip of mead, your thoughts drifting like fog over a quiet cove. Historians still argue whether these markets were also where superstitions were born, where tales of shape-shifting seals, sea giants, and fish with prophetic dreams first took root. Looking around at the colorful chaos and half-true boasts, you think it's entirely possible. Your fingers tighten around the honey jar, the promise of sweetness later tonight, sparking a warm flicker inside you. You lean back, letting the smoke curl around your face, your ears soaking in snippets of gossip, trade haggles, and jokes about goat theft. Tomorrow, the sea will call again, the seals will hover in the shallows, and you'll once more dance your awkward dance of net and knot. But for now, you sip, you smirk, and you savor this small, honey-tinged victory among friends. As you shuffle away from the trading circle, your basket lighter and your spirits curiously buoyant, you notice the sun climbing, its rays skipping across the frost-tipped rooftops. You feel a pleasant warmth blooming in your chest, or maybe it's just the mead finally working its sleepy magic. Your steps wander aimlessly toward a small rise overlooking the bay. You settle on a mossy rock, jar of honey nestled protectively in your lap like a newborn sealed pup. You tilt your head back, letting your gaze drift across the shimmering water. The tide slips in and out, like a shy guest at a feast, and each wave seems to hum a different tune. Your thoughts meander to last night's catch, the mischief in those seal eyes, and the family's endless debates. Then, without warning, your brain slides sideways into something stranger, a mead-soaked dream you had not long ago. You close your eyes and slip back into that dreamscape. You're floating beneath the waves, the water thick and heavy like honey, wrapping around your arms and legs in a gentle squeeze. Above you, vast forests of seaweed sway, each frond as tall as a pine, their tips crowned with tiny shimmering lights. You drift between the stalks, ducking in and out like a seabird, through summer reeds. As you glide deeper, you spot seals, wearing delicate crowns woven from moonlight and shell fragments. They move with a regal grace, gesturing to one another in an elaborate underwater ballet. One seal floats forward, raising a fin in greeting, and you nod solemnly, as if meeting a visiting chieftain. In your dream, you understand their language perfectly, a soft symphony of clicks, hums, and bubbles. Historians still argue whether these underwater visions were taken seriously as spiritual messages, or simply dismissed as the side effects of too much fermented honey mead. You, at this moment, are inclined to believe in the former, at least until the dream wears off, and your back starts to ache again. In this kelp kingdom, you're invited to a banquet. The seals present you with platters of iridescent fish, shimmering oysters that glow softly like captured stars, and a jug of what they call deep current nectar. You raise the jug and nearly spit it out as you realize it tastes exactly like last winter's failed batch of fish sauce. The seals roar with laughter, slapping their sides and flipping through the water in gleeful somersaults. One seal slides up beside you, and whispers that the only way to truly understand the sea is to become a wave yourself. You consider this, your dream self, nodding sagely, though your real-world self can't help but wonder if that would mean giving up honey forever. You shake your dream head vigorously. Some sacrifices are simply too much. Then the scene shifts abruptly. You find yourself standing on the moon, surrounded by towering dunes of pale sea salt. The seals now wear heavy cloaks of woven seaweed and chant strange riddles that echo into the dark sky. You try to respond, but all that comes out is a stream of bubbles, each one shaped like tiny fish. You watch them drift up and vanish among the stars. You awaken with a jolt, heart hammering, eyes wide as the dawn itself. You half expect to find seaweed wrapped around your ankles or a shimmering oyster tucked under your arm. Instead, there's only your sticky jar of honey and the soft snoring of your neighbor's goat drifting up the hill. You laugh quietly, shaking your head as you wipe a bit of drool from your chin. You stand and stretch, feeling your joints creak and pop in a slow chorus. You imagine each crack as an echo of the dream seals applauding your performance. You raise your honey jar in a mock toast toward the bay, promising silently to save a dollop for them, should they decide to accept human tributes today. Historians still argue whether these dream visions influenced daily fishing strategies or if they served mainly to entertain around fire pits. Your grandmother insisted that dreams were gifts from Njord, the sea god, while your uncle claimed they were punishment for stealing too many clams. You prefer to think of them as free tickets to a midnight comedy show under the waves. Your gaze wanders back toward the village, where life begins to stir in earnest. Children chase chickens across muddy yards. Elders shout greetings and mild insults. And somewhere, a dog yelps in protest at having its tail stepped on. The scent of smoked fish begins to creep up the hill, stirring your stomach into a curious, gurgling symphony. You pat your tunic pocket, where a small piece of seaweed rests, a souvenir from last night's repairs. You think about crafting a little crown for yourself, maybe to wear during tomorrow's pre-dawn seal standoff. You chuckle, imagining the looks you'd get from your family. Half of them thinking you've gone mad, the other half jealous they didn't think of it first. Dot your feet, find the worn path back to the longhouse almost on their own. Each step feels heavy and buoyant all at once, as though part of you still drifts among those moonlit kelp forests. You clutch the honey jar tighter, your prized connection to the surface world. You step carefully over a frozen puddle, imagining it might crack open and reveal a laughing seal judge, ready to score your balance. You arrive at the door just as someone flings it open, warm smells and laughter rushing out to meet you like old friends. You smile and step inside, bracing yourself for another round of teasing, stories, and maybe another bowl of eel stew, because apparently, no one can get enough of that. But for now, you savor the honey-sweet echo of your underwater kingdom, knowing that tonight, when you drift off again, the seals might just invite you back. The door slams behind you, cutting off the morning frost like a blade. Inside, the longhouse hums with life. The low crackle of the hearth, spoons tapping on wooden bowls, and muffled laughter spilling from every corner. You stomp your boots, bits of mud and stray fish scales scattering across the floorboards like confetti at a wedding nobody wanted to attend. Your mother's sharp eyes catch the honey jar first. She arches an eyebrow so high, it might just leap off her forehead. Trading day gone well, I see, she says, her voice a blend of suspicion and amusement. You give a sheepish shrug, lifting the jar as though it were a sacred relic. The room erupts in delighted gasps, your siblings lunging forward like starved wolves, sniffing a lone berry bush. You fend them off with exaggerated swats, your laughter joining the general uproar. Historians still argue whether Viking families truly squabbled over treats this fiercely, or if modern romanticized tales have exaggerated the sweetness wars. Watching your little brother attempt a full-body tackle for a lick of honey, you're fairly certain the truth leans toward the chaotic. Your father, sprawled on a fur-covered bench, waves dismissively. If you were half as clever with nets as you are with honey, we'd have enough fish to trade for an entire ox, he bellows, the words tumbling out between snorts. You retort with a grin, and if you sang to the seals as sweetly as you snore, they'd probably deliver the fish right to our door. The room bursts into raucous laughter, your father nearly choking on his mead. You bow dramatically, nearly dropping the honey. The goat in the corner gives a disapproving bleat, as if to say, your comedic timing needs work. You flash it, a wink, promising to improve your routine. As the meal begins, a steaming pot of fish and barley stew lands in front of you. You scoop a generous portion, your stomach rumbling like distant thunder. You drizzle a tiny swirl of honey over your bowl, a scandalous move that elicits gasps and shrieks from your siblings. You smirk and declare, "It's called culinary innovation." Your sister threatens to report you to the local spirits for food blasphemy. Between mouthfuls, the seal stories begin anew. An uncle claims seals have learned to mimic human rowing sounds to lure fishermen into deeper, dangerous waters. Your aunt insists she once saw a seal wearing a piece of bright red cloth, evidence it had raided someone's laundry line. Historians still argue whether these stories were cautionary myths or simply the result of too much late-night ale. You suspect both. After all, nothing inspires creative storytelling quite like a full stomach and a cozy fire. You finish your bowl, belly pleasantly full and mind drifting lazily. You lean back, eyes half closed, listening to the shifting cadence of voices around you. Someone launches into a song, half lullaby, half epic brag, about a fisherman who married a selkie and ended up living underwater, raising a dozen half-sealed children who never learned to fold laundry properly. You snicker, picturing small, slippery kids darting around with seaweed capes, knocking over every net in sight. The warmth from the fire seeps into your bones, softening the ache in your arms and quieting the ghost of last night's cold waves. You feel your breath lengthen, each exhale a gentle wave rolling out into a dreamier shore. The world blurs at the edges, the crackle of logs blending with distant giggles and half-sung verses. Your head lolls forward for a moment. You snap back, blink in. Across the room, your mother gives you a knowing smile, as if to say, "Go on, drift away. You've earned it." You nod, slipping into a deeper, softer posture, your eyelids sinking like anchors in your drowsy haze. You imagine the seals peeking through the door, politely waiting for an invitation to join the stew, or perhaps to critique your honey drizzle technique. You imagine handing them tiny wooden spoons, debating the merits of eel versus herring, and them clapping their flippers in approval or snorting disdain. Historians still argue whether these dreamy, half-waking visions were considered sacred or just signs of exhaustion after a long winter. You suspect they were both part spiritual communion, part accidental comedy hour. Your mind starts wandering further, floating into softer, dimmer places. You picture the moonlit kelp forests again, the glowing oysters, and seals wearing their shimmering crowns, beckoning you to join their midnight feasts. You feel the warmth of the honey, the hush of the waves, and the lull of the longhouse walls wrapping around you like a heavy wool cloak. The laughter fades into a gentle hum. You let your head fall back, your body as heavy as a full net, your breath a steady tide in and out. You surrender to the warmth, the silliness, the half-true legends that bind you to this family, this sea, this endless dance. You drift, softly and willingly, toward a deeper shore. Your dreams barely have time to take shape before a sudden clatter jolts you awake. You blink, disoriented, your mouth sticky from the honey and your mind still swimming through moonlit kelp forests. Across the longhouse, your younger cousin barrels through the doorway, hair wild, cheeks flushed like a startled salmon. She carries what looks like a pile of seaweed, and she's shrieking with laughter so loud the goat nearly faints. You squint, trying to decipher what on earth you're looking at, then it clicks. She's made a seal mask, a hilariously lumpy creation of seaweed strips, fish bones, and 2 seashells for eyes. She plops it onto her head and begins waddling in circles, making awkward barking noises and swatting at imaginary fish. Your stomach clenches, and before you can help it, you burst into such loud, wheezy laughter that tears roll down your cheeks. Historians still argue whether such seaweed disguises were ever truly used to scare seals away from nets, or if they were simply a playful pastime to entertain kids on stormy evenings. Watching your cousin now, you're convinced it must have been the latter. No seal on earth would fall for this absurd, wiggly spectacle. But you have to admit, she's committed. She even throws in a slow-motion dive toward the goat's feed bucket, as if it were a pile of freshly caught herring. Your mother claps her hands, roaring with approval. Your father wipes his eyes and gasps for breath, muttering something about the bravest seal warrior in the village. Even the goat seems frozen in confused awe, ears twitching in cautious fascination. Your cousin finally stops her performance and pulls off the mask, revealing a face so red she might as well have been cooked. She takes a grand theatrical bow, seaweed dripping down her shoulders. You get up, still laughing, and ruffle her hair. She squeaks and darts away, leaving a trail of wet green strands across the floor. The longhouse echoes with renewed laughter, as if the walls themselves are shaking in mirth. You wipe your face and glance toward the window. Out beyond the shimmering morning haze, you can see the seals lounging near the rocks, sunning their sleek bodies like spoiled cats. You half expect them to break into applause, or toss you a sarcastic fin wave. You raise a hand in greeting, feeling an odd camaraderie despite your lifelong rivalry. You sit down heavily, your knees popping in protest. You pull your repaired net onto your lap, running your fingers along each knot, feeling the story of every tangle and tear. You imagine telling the seals about this new seal mask, hoping they'd appreciate the joke. Maybe they'd even offer design notes. More sparkle here, or fewer bones next time, please. Historians still argue whether these small moments of humor and play acted as secret spells against the hardships of sea life, or simply ways to stay sane through endless winters. You suspect it's both a protective charm woven from laughter, fish scales, and the shared absurdity of living. At the edge of the world, your uncle saunters over and squints at the mask now discarded on the floor. He picks it up carefully, turns it around, and then, without a word, places it on his own head. He stands there for a moment, eerily silent, then lets out the most pitiful, off-key seal bark you've ever heard. The room explodes again. Even the goat jumps, bolts into a corner, and stares like it's reconsidering every life choice. Your sides ache from laughing, and you flop sideways onto a pile of furs, clutching your stomach. You try to catch your breath, gasping between giggles, tears stinging your eyes. You feel the warmth of the longhouse envelop you again, a blanket made of firelight, salty jokes, and 100 half-true stories. Your aunt declares that this seal performance must become a new family tradition. She insists everyone craft a seaweed mask for the next moon feast. You picture an entire clan wearing these slimy crowns, chanting nonsense songs at the edge of the water while the seals watch, utterly perplexed. The image is so vivid and ridiculous you almost lose control of your lungs again. You finally manage to sit up, rubbing your jaw, still hiccuping from the laughter. You glance toward the doorway, feeling the tug of the sea beyond. Tomorrow, you'll return to the cold waves and the cunning dance with your whiskered rivals. You'll mend your nets, bicker with the seals, and maybe even try a new seaweed decoy. But tonight, the seal mask sits like a soggy crown upon the hearth, a reminder of the gentle absurdity that keeps you going. You lean back again, eyes drifting, closed, head filled with visions of dancing seals, moonlit banquets, and a new era of comedic fishing tactics. The longhouse murmurs around you, voices fading into a soft, rhythmic hum. Like waves against a worn hull, you breathe in deep, your chest rising slow and steady. The world narrows to the hush of the fire, the ghost of laughter in your ribs, and the faint echo of seal songs carried on the breeze outside, and slowly, sweetly, you slip into that soft twilight of half-dreams, where every ripple feels like a lullaby, and every seal might just whisper your name. The longhouse has grown quiet now, the echo of laughter replaced by gentle snores, and the slow, deliberate crackle of the hearth. You stir from your fur pile, blinking away the last dregs of your laughter-soaked haze. You push yourself up, joints creaking like old oars, and glance around. The seal mask still sits on the hearth, its seashell eyes reflecting the fading glow of embers like two tiny moons. You reach out and lightly touch it, feeling the cold, slimy seaweed edges now stiff and shriveled. You chuckle under your breath, the memory of your cousin's waddle still fresh and vivid. You give the mask a mock salute, silently promising the seals outside that tomorrow you'll return with new tricks. Outside, the moon has begun its slow descent, casting long, spidery shadows over the icy shoreline. You step carefully to the doorway, careful not to disturb the softly snoring lumps of your family members scattered like driftwood across the benches and floor. You ease the door open, and the world greets you with a blast of salty cold that instantly stings your cheeks. You step onto the crunchy frost, breathing in deeply. The air tastes like possibility, and maybe a hint of goat. You wander down the path toward the boats, your feet finding the familiar grooves etched into the earth by countless return trips. The moonlight spills across the water, turning every ripple into a silver thread pulling you forward. You stop at your boat, resting a hand on its worn rim. You trace the grooves in the wood, each one a memory, a close call with a seal gang ambush, a particularly rough wave that knocked your lunch overboard, a victorious day when the nets came back so heavy you thought the gods themselves had helped haul them in. Your breath puffs out in soft rhythmic clouds, and you catch yourself humming an old seal song under your breath. Historians still argue whether these pre-dawn wanderings were spiritual rituals, acts of quiet devotion to the sea, or just a way to escape snoring siblings. You lean toward all three, your mind drifting easily between reverence and gentle mockery. Just as it always does. You squat by the water's edge and scoop up a handful, letting it trickle through your fingers. It slides down your wrist like a whispered dare. You imagine the seals lurking just beneath the dark surface, eyes gleaming with mischief, whispering in their own language, ready for round two. You smirk, flicking the last drops back at the waves. Like a playful challenge, you spot a patch of seaweed washed ashore nearby. You wander over, pick it up, and drape it around your shoulders like a regal cloak. You strut along the beach, striking overly dramatic poses for an audience of moonlight, an imaginary seal paparazzi. You imagine tomorrow's gossip circle among the seals. Did you see the human last night? He thinks he's Neptune's weird cousin. Your imagination drifts to the rumored seaweed festivals some fishermen claim exist, gatherings where people parade their strangest seaweed costumes in hopes of earning seal-proof luck for the next season. Historians still argue whether these festivals actually happened or if they were simply invented to justify why someone came home covered in kelp after a night of heavy mead. You glance down at your makeshift cloak, now dripping cold water into your boots. You shrugged. It was worth it for the laugh. You peel it off, flop it onto a rock, and consider that maybe next time you'll add seashell earrings for extra flair. A sudden splash snaps your attention back to the water. You squint into the darkness, and there just beyond the moon's shimmering path, a sleek head bobs up, watching. You feel that electric zing in your chest, the one that always comes when you lock eyes with a seal. You raise a hand in greeting, and to your utter delight, the seal lifts a flipper in return. You swear it winks before vanishing below the surface, leaving only ripples and a lingering sense of shared humor. You laugh out loud, the sound scattering across the waves like startled gulls. Your voice sounds strange out here, stripped of the longhouse walls and firelit safety. It feels raw, bright, and a little holy, like confessing a secret directly to the moon. Your thoughts drift to tomorrow's possibilities. Another pre-dawn departure, the first cut of cold wind against your face, the familiar creak of the oars. You'll toss your nets with more seaweed decoys, whisper a few jokes to the waves, and maybe, just maybe, catch the seals off guard for once. But deep down, you know the dance is the real catch. The game, the challenge, the sly exchange of glances that feel more intimate than any word. You let out a long breath, feeling it feather out across the shore. You glance back at the longhouse, warm light still flickering faintly, a quiet promise of warmth and teasing awaiting your return. You turn once more to the sea, bow slightly, and murmur, "See you soon, friends." Then, with a final grin and a soggy squelch in your boots, you shuffle back up the path, ready to tuck yourself into the lullaby of firelight and dreams of moonlit kelp dances. You slip back into the longhouse as quietly as a ghost, careful not to jostle the half-sleeping forms scattered like sea-worn stones across the floor. The warmth greets you instantly, wrapping around your damp shoulders, nudging away the last shards of icy moonlight clinging to your skin. You exhale deeply, the kind of breath that seems to tug at something deep in your chest, a gentle reminder that, for all the battles with seals and seaweed, this warmth is your anchor. You settle into your favorite fur pile near the hearth, the place where your grandmother always claimed the spirits of old fishermen gathered to whisper jokes and share secret fish recipes. You lean your head back and close your eyes, letting your fingers absent-mindedly trace the rough lines of your net resting nearby. You imagine each knot as a tiny doorway to a different memory. The day you nearly lost the net to a particularly sassy seal. The time you caught more seaweed than fish and claimed it was intentional gourmet harvesting. Or the stormy night when you swore you heard a seal sing your name in the darkness. Historians still argue whether Norse fishermen truly believed seals and humans once shared souls. That ancient legend about a single creature split into two forms, one to dance on land, and one to glide under the waves. Tonight, that idea feels less like a quaint tale, and more like a quiet truth humming just beneath your ribs. You remember the seal's flipper wave, the sly glint in its eye. Maybe you really are two halves of the same wandering spirit. A stray log pops in the hearth, sending a brief cascade of sparks up into the dim rafters. The glow flickers across the seal mask perched nearby, its seashell eyes glimmering like distant stars. You chuckle softly, recalling your cousin's performance, the unstoppable laughter, the goat's tragic meltdown. You wonder if the seals tell each other bedtime stories about you, the legend of the laughing fisher. Perhaps, or the tale of the honey. You shift deeper into the furs, rolling your shoulders, feeling every bruise and ache from the day's work. But underneath the soreness lies a hum of satisfaction, a golden warmth that no amount of frost can smother. You replay the day in your mind, the morning barter, the mead-laced dreams, the absurd seaweed cloak, the moonlit exchange with your whiskered rival. Each moment glows, strung together like beads on a salt-stained string. Tomorrow waits with its endless to-do list. Nets to mend, lines to untangle, fish to haul, jokes to toss at seals, who may or may not appreciate your comedic genius. But tomorrow feels gentle from this vantage point, softened by the hush of the hearth and the slow, rhythmic breathing of those around you. You hear your mother stir, mumbling something about moon blessings before sinking back into her own dreamscape. You smile, eyes tracing the flickering shadows playing along the wall. The wind whispers outside, weaving through gaps in the timber, carrying hints of salt and distant waves. You imagine it's the seals, practicing new jokes or composing ocean ballads dedicated to your questionable rowing technique. Historians still argue whether these twilight hours, this liminal space between waking and sleep, were seen as sacred windows to the gods or merely necessary pauses in an exhausting life. For you, they're both here. In this fragile hush, your mind floats free, your bones rest easy, and your heart drifts into moonlit kelp forests without worry of seals stealing your catch. You roll over, pressing your cheek into the furs, letting your eyelids slide closed like a curtain at the end of a play. Your breath deepens, each inhale tasting faintly of smoke and honey, each exhale trailing out into the dark like a lazy wave. Your last thought before slipping under. Perhaps tomorrow, when you see that seal again, you'll offer it a spoonful of honey, just to see what happens, just to keep the dance alive. Now, you let your breathing soften even more, like the slow unfurling of seaweed beneath gentle waves. Feel the hush settling around your shoulders, the warmth of the hearth seeping into your skin, smoothing every frayed edge. Outside, the moon slides behind a curtain of wispy clouds, casting a gentle glow across the rocks and hush-hush tides. The seals, perhaps, are floating just offshore, their sleek forms rocking in rhythm with your heartbeat, their whiskered faces turned to the moon in silent reverence. With each slow breath, imagine the heavy nets slipping from your hands, the cold waves receding from your ankles, the long day's noise dissolving into a soft, distant echo. You are here, safe and quiet, wrapped in fur and story, drifting along a shoreline that belongs only to you. The dance with the seals can wait. The clever plots, the jokes, the net repairs, all of it can rest for now. Feel your eyelids grow heavy, each blink longer, slower, softer. The warmth of the fire becomes a soft tide, carrying you deeper, deeper into the quiet cove of sleep. The longhouse breathes around you, a chorus of gentle snores, a lullaby of warmth and belonging. Somewhere in your dreams, the kelp forests sway, the seals giggle softly, and the moonlight drips like honey into the ocean. You float there, unbothered, free, cradled by the sea and the stars above. Let the softness cradle you now. Let your muscles release every story they carried today. Drift, drift, drift. You are home. You are whole. You are already dreaming. End of script. Sweet dreams.